this whole thing is so crazy. And I know you've been following our coverage a bit and say we have it almost right, but not totally right on what happened that day when you and Jack Posobiec and Libs of TikTok's Chaya Raichik, a bunch of well-known right-leaning influencers were invited to the White House. So tell us how that went down.
One of the misunderstandings, I think, is we weren't invited to the White House to receive the Epstein binders, those infernal white binders. We weren't invited for that purpose. We weren't even invited to meet specifically with Attorney General Pam Bondi. We were invited to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance. In fact, a couple weeks prior to that meeting, I had received a text message inviting me to come to the White House to meet with the vice president. And no reason was given for the visit. And I remember turning to my husband at the time and being like, oh, I bet they're calling me to the White House to scold me, because I had just been on Glenn Beck's radio program I think the day before, criticizing President Trump's executive order on in vitro and suggesting that there might be a better way to help heal the chronic infertility crisis in our country. And I said, oh, I bet they want to have some words with me about that. And I kind of laughed about it, but you get invited to the White House, you go. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. It's so cool. It's so incredible there. I asked them, I was like, oh yeah, what's this in reference to? And they had mentioned like, oh, it's a group meeting with the vice president. I was like, sure, I'll be there, of course. So I go that day to the White House, and I didn't know who else was invited. I actually didn't know the names of any of the people that were also going to be in that room with us until we were standing in the security line in Secret Service together outside the White House. And I see these various, prominent conservatives, especially on X. So we go into the White House and we are taken into, I was actually a couple minutes late because my flight was delayed that morning. I had flown in at the crack of dawn. And we're in the room, the cabinet room, which is right across the hall from the Oval Office. And there's nameplates at each chair. We're all expected. This is not just a tour of the White House. This is where our meeting is. And the meeting's being chaired by the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who explains to us the purpose of the visit. The purpose of the visit, she said, was because the mainstream media, the corporate media, is no longer going to be rewarded by the Trump administration for their lying and their smears, their propagandizing on behalf of the other side. Instead, the White House is going to, in a sense, coronate a new media. You are going to get access, she told us, to high-ranking decision makers and cabinet secretaries at the White House, because the mainstream media shouldn't be given that kind of access when they have just lied and smeared and cheated President Trump. And so the schedule for the day, we're told, is we are going to have meetings with a lot of these different cabinet secretaries and decision makers, and we're going to have a forum to ask them questions, to network with them, to get to know them, just to integrate our media efforts into the White House. And so that's what happened.